The Iowa National Guard has been put on standby.
The Democrats have had massive collusion, massive obstruction, and they should be investigated.
Dark Winter. The Republic Under Fire with Kenneth B. Mills.
Today here in the United States, the constitutional republic is taking heavy fire from the heavy guns of the mainstream media.
Good evening. For more than a year, the President of the United States has claimed the Russia story is a hoax. Now, a stunning indictment says it is not, no matter what the President has been saying again and again and again.
As they unleash a seemingly endless barrage of unsubstantiated, outrageous attacks on brave patriots from Shining Sea to Shining Sea. The FBI, CIA, Homeland Security, and even the Justice Department seem more like the enemy of the people rather than the government institutions there to protect the American way of life. The Marxist war machine has come over the top of the trenches and is advancing across the wasteland towards what is left of our free democracy. It's bad, and it looks like it's only going to get worse. From victory at Yorktown in 1781, the Declaration of Independence in 1776, rising to become the dominant economic and military power on the planet, America is now a nation in an existential crisis. The question is, how did we get from there to here? Let us take a look at an important theory of how power works. The core of the elitist doctrine is that there may exist in any society a minority of the population which takes the major decisions in the society. Michaels, for example, wrote, "Historical evolution mocks all the prophylactic measures that have been adopted for the prevention of oligarchy. If laws are passed to control the dominion of leaders, it is the laws which gradually weaken and not the leaders." What this means, of course, is that the constitutional safeguards centered around the separation of powers is bound to be breached at some time. I would go further and say the ruling minority itself contains a minority that cannot be contained. The result is eventually you get absolutism through the back door, the very thing that the founding fathers fought against. This invisible royal family does not make itself known. It stays above the ceiling of perception. This is not an accident. This is simply the way power will always organize itself. Those at the very top are very small in number and have to rule many. The way they do this is through stealth and deception. They have a level of aristocracy beneath them, which take form of a ruling class, and then they have a political structure below them, the deep state, and then the formal government below them. And this gives the illusion of democracy, while in fact the invisible royalty continue to advance their hidden agenda. The question is, how does the multi-trillion-dollar invisible royalty take control of society? In ancient times, the kings won their power on the battlefield. Our modern invisible aristocracy and royalty won it by taking control of the means of production, a very special means of production, the money supply. By printing money, and as much of it as they want, they are in a position to buy everything, and over time they control everything through essentially a laundering process, so you couldn't possibly trace the money back to the source of the Federal Reserve. What happens essentially is when the US government wants to borrow money, the Federal Reserve creates it out of thin air, and then the US government takes that money and then has to pay interest, and it is the taxpayer that pays interest on that. Meanwhile, trillions of dollars go missing, and the fact is no one knows where it went. Well, we can guess where it went. It went to the invisible royalty, and it's used to pay for their entire operation. And so while the palaces and the kings may not be visible to us, they exist. They exist in the shadows. They instruct the visible aristocracy, the billionaires that you can see. They hold dominion over the deep state. So it's very clear that the real threat to the Constitution is not Marxism directly. That's simply the battering ram. The real threat to the democracy is the minority within the minority that becomes essentially the invisible royalty that owns the entire means of production through the money supply. They subvert democracy because they can effectively bribe or control, directly purchase anything they want. And we know power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that is the existential threat to the constitutional republic today.